I also want to take a moment to express my gratitude to Zoom, because as we were doing the tech check a moment ago, I was struck by how much easier and more reliable these kinds of connections are than when I first started giving remote presentations over 20 years ago. The kind of communication that I'm going to talk about today is also video communication, but it's very different from Zoom because it takes place on TikTok. But I want to start with an observation that really I think has been a thread that has run through much of my research, which has to do with what I'm calling the conversational imperative. In spoken language, this is an everyday language, I guess we could say, the drive to converse, even if it's with strangers and even if the content is completely banal. So think of bus stop conversations with strangers who are waiting for the bus together, or conversations that you have with people who are sitting next to you on an airplane just to pass the time. And Naomi Barron in 1990 used the term conversational imperative to refer to this. So I'm borrowing that term. But I want to talk today about what we might want to call the technological conversational imperative, which is the drive to converse, even in technology environments that are prima facie unconducive or unfriendly to conversation. And in fact, there are many of them, including the internet itself, or rather its predecessor, the ARPANET, which was initiated by the United States Department of Defense in 1966 to develop a robust computer network that could function after a nuclear attack. It was intended to be able to send packets of encoded information and not for people to communicate with each other primarily. Well, we see how that turned out. But in my own research, I've noticed, especially in gaming and broadcasting platforms, some very improbable forms of communication that have taken place. For example, on the first-person shooter game BZ Flag, where your players are your avatars are tanks. People are constantly your avatar is constantly being shot at in the game. And yet people will nonetheless have little side conversations over text chat, even if it means that their avatar is killed. Or in ITV SMS, in work that I did with Asta Zelenkowskaite, where people send text messages to television programs, and the messages are displayed for about 12 to 15 seconds at the bottom of the screen. We found that people were using this as a way to exchange messages back and forth, including flirting and establishing romantic connections and having fights, all in the space of these messages that appear briefly on the television screen. So obviously there are many easier ways to communicate than using these kinds of technologies, and yet people seem to get some kind of enjoyment out of it, perhaps perversely, because of the difficulty of doing it and the improbability that conversation would take place in these environments. And we will see, I think, some parallels between these kinds of communication situations and the situations that I'm going to talk about today with TikTok. And a lot of this work is actually based on thinking that I did in around 2010, when I guest edited a special issue of Language and Internet on the theme of computer-mediated conversation. And in my introduction to that volume, I made two kinds of claims. The first is that technological change is resulting in broadened definitions of the notion of conversation itself. And particularly in that collection, we were talking about chat and email exchanges or messages exchanged on web forums, which I argued can constitute conversation if you define it broadly as any exchange of messages between two or more participants where the messages that follow bear at least minimal relevance to those that preceded or are otherwise intended as responses. Now, this definition makes several key assumptions. First, that conversations involve back and forth exchanges. Second, that participants address one another, explicitly or implicitly, to indicate for whom individual turns are intended. This is what Sachs et al. Called turn allocation. And ideally, that responses to initiating turns should be topically and pragmatically relevant, following Grice. What is notable also about the definition is what it does not assume. It does not assume synchronicity. The conversations don't have to take place in real time. And it doesn't assume any particular modality. And I spent a fair amount of time thinking in my research around that time about the challenges that people overcome when they converse through textual CMC. And these have since been, I think, widely understood to be, dynamics that go on in online communication. So, for example, the absence of visual and gestural cues that signal turn allocation in face-to-face communication, disrupted turn adjacency due to the one-way linear message transmission of most CMC systems, and the fact that in much public CMC, there are multiple potential addressees in discussion forums and chat groups and so forth. And nonetheless, users manage to route around these problems and by various adaptations that are also, I think, at this point pretty well understood. One of these is addressivity, for example, invoking another participant by their name or second person pronoun form of address. And another is quoting or embedding one message into another to create the impression of turn adjacency. Both of these notions of addressivity and quoting are relevant in the dynamics that I'm going to discuss today about video. Now, that said, it's important to state at the outset that asynchronous video-mediated communication, in contrast with synchronous video conferencing over Zoom and video chat and so forth, but asynchronous video-mediated communication is not particularly friendly to conversation if we think about a video as being a turn unit, in the same way that a message can be a turn unit in text chat, for example. For one thing, exchanging whole videos as conversational turns is unwieldy, and it occurs rather rarely. In the literature, there's a study by Pilaja, for example, in Language at Internet, where he talks about kind of an ideological back and forth between an atheist and a Christian, but it only involves the exchange of 3 videos total. So there's just not much studies that show that people are actually doing this. And there's a reason for this, because video creation takes more time than typing a message. And you have on YouTube, for example, the initiation and any response videos are separated in time and sometimes by quite a bit of time. So this is a form of disrupted turn adjacency. And also, the initiator may not see the response video. YouTube used to make this easier to respond to a video. There was a link you could click and then post your response video, and they discontinued that feature. So pretty much the only way you would know if you didn't happen to come across these videos would be if they shared elements of their title or labeling. So these YouTube conversations over exchange of videos is not really much of a thing. So then we come to TikTok, and TikTok, like YouTube, is designed for sharing asynchronous videos. But unlike YouTube, the videos are very short, less than 3 minutes, some of them much shorter than that. And they involve numerous multimodal kind of features, like you can have a default synthesized voice, music backgrounds, In terms of sound, in terms of text, you've got text captioning and hashtags. And in terms of graphics, you've got various kinds of emoji and also face filters and so forth and so on. And just a little bit of background about TikTok, which I assume most of you are sort of generally familiar with. But it is not very old. It originated in China in 2016, was introduced globally in 2017. It still exists in China as Douyin, where it's very, very popular. But it got a big boost during the pandemic, and by the end of, I believe, first quarter 2020, it was the most downloaded non-game app worldwide. In terms of demographics, it's slightly more female users, especially in the United States. Women use TikTok more than men, and a majority are Gen Z, young. So TikTok is not entirely unfriendly to interaction between users. They have features such as duets and stitches, which are supported by the platform. And in addition, people often perform what are called skits. So you might have within a single video, two or more people who are interacting with each other, typically playing out a scenario that they've designated in advance, and sometimes a single individual who takes on multiple roles within one video. But duets and stitches are actually formally supported by the platform, and the structure looks something like what we've got here in the graphic, where a stitch on the right is where you can take up to 5 seconds of a previous video, embed it in your response video, and it appears on the top of the screen typically. Well, the text of the video appears on the top and at the beginning. And then we have duets where the response video and the original video, what I'm calling RV and OV, appear side by side. That's the focus of the research that I'm going to tell you about today. If you're not familiar with duets, they allow a TikTok user to create a response video in which they record themselves along an original video that has already been recorded. This was a format that was originally intended for lip syncing, so people would sort of sing along by lip syncing to a recorded song, a popular song, and or dancing along with the original video, as in this still shot that I captured here, where a child on the left is dancing along with a TikTok influencer on the right. TikTok dancing videos became very popular during the beginning of the pandemic. If anybody remembers that, it was a big thing on TikTok to dance along while you were stuck at home. But response videos also sometimes employ the duet feature to create the illusion of being in a synchronous conversation with the original video, which is what I'm going to be focusing on today. And this is just a screenshot from an example of two girls engaging in conversational duet. So what this looks like schematically is something like this, because OV is pre-recorded. Let's say OV has 3 utterances. RV responds by inserting their utterance at a point in time such that it appears to follow our OV's utterance, first utterance. OV in a spoken conversation normally might have the option to respond back to RV's responses, but in TikTok duets, this is not possible unless somehow OV imagines in advance the conversation that is going to occur and what RV is going to say, in which case they could appear to be responding to OV's responses. There are many challenges to producing duet conversations. First of all, OV may have no intention or awareness of participating in a conversation, and as such may not leave gaps or places for RV to insert their turns. Also, OV cannot respond, as I was just illustrating, in real time to RV. So there's no possibility of back and forth message exchange. And finally, OV's and RV's contributions are constructed as wholes at different points in time. So there is no real-time interaction, and not to put too fine a point on it, but reciprocal interaction inside duets is technically impossible. So the questions that we asked in this study are, first of all, within the limitations and possibilities afforded by the TikTok interface, what user behaviors and discursive practices promote the illusion that the OV and the RV are conversing together in real time? And second, what kinds of conversational contexts are discursively invoked through duets, and how are these reflected in the personae and the registers that OV and RV perform? It's a little bit of theoretical background, which is probably well known to most of you. The focus in the methodology is on conversational turn-taking. And in the literature on conversation analysis, the term TCU, or turn construction unit, is used to refer to a segment of speech in a conversation. And then the term transition relevance place, or TRP, refers to a point of possible utterance completion where speaker change is a possible next action. And transition relevance places, or TRPs, are signaled by typically utterance final intonation contour of the original speaker, grammatical completeness of the utterance of the original speaker, and if the original speaker leaves a pause or a gap. The ideal in conversation, in turn exchange specifically, is no gap, no overlap, as Sachs et al. Famously claimed in the article in 1974 in Language. However, this ideal is very often violated, and in particular, overlapping is really quite common in spoken language. It can be inadvertent. Somebody simply may be anticipating a TRP and coming in too early, or it can be intentional. And the intentions can be uncooperative or cooperative. Uncooperative intentions are often interpreted as interruptions or rudeness, and cooperative overlaps can show engagement, or what Deborah Tannen referred to as a high involvement style. So to produce a conversational duet, the response video on TikTok should ideally do 6 things. First of all, they have to listen to the OV, and they may have to listen repeatedly to figure out exactly where are what are the TCUs, in OV speech, to identify these, and then to insert their contributions at or near TRPs to avoid overlapping OV too much. They also have to time their insertions precisely when overlap becomes unavoidable, so as to make the overlapping appear intentional and to avoid interfering with the intelligibility of OV by not talking over it. Then they have to record their video responding to the OV, and maybe they need to re-record it until they are satisfied with it, and then post the results. So this requires a certain amount of time and energy, as well as, I will argue, some interactional skill. Okay, so now the study that I did this with my then doctoral student, now Dr. Ashley Danis. And we initially generated 2 samples of duets for this study. The first one, starting in fall 2021 and through spring 2022, we did purpose sampling of 100 English language TikTok videos We searched under the hashtags duet, duetted, duet videos, and other related terms. And there is a search feature on TikTok as illustrated in the graphic on the left here, and it pulls up various hits. We watched them, and we collected videos that met the criteria of having at least 2 consecutive turns of interaction, which could not include simply singing. So there was some kind of verbalization. Well, I'll say in a minute about the different modalities, but there was some kind of non-singing communication, let's say. Also, the OV and the RV had to address each other at least once, implicitly or explicitly. And when we collected this initial sample, we noticed that there were some videos where the RV was interacting with an OV that was either inanimate or an animal like a cat or a dog, or a pre-verbal infant. And in fact, there were several videos with a single OV of an infant on the pretending to talk on a cell phone to its grandma. And this was what we are calling now the baby video. This was enormously popular. It was posted on January 20th, 2022, and as of June 4th, less than 6 months later, it had 20.9 million views and had been duetted 28,000 times. So we were curious as to what made this video so duettable and what kind of duets were being produced with this pre-verbal baby. So we collected 600 of the most favorited duets. So we refer to these as the initial sample and the baby sample. Our method of analysis was systematic content analysis, which is transcribing a sequence and then analyzing it systematically using previous principal findings in conversation analysis to unpack the sequence and identify patterns in the data. And particularly the previous principal findings in conversation analysis that we used had to do with turn taking and overlap and interruption. But the actual process, we viewed the videos repeatedly in the initial sample and transcribed selected duets. Then we analyzed the transcribed duets systematically, turn by turn, focusing on turn taking, overlaps, and also addressivity. We then examined the contributions of the OV to the duets, particularly the degree to which the OV anticipated being part of a duet. We formulated general observations about each duet, noting features of particular interest, and we identified recurring themes that emerged across the duets in the initial sample, and then confirmed those themes by examining the baby sample and flagging duets that supported those themes. And these are some of the transcription conventions that we used. This is a modified and simplified version of Gail Jefferson's commonly used set of conventions. And notably, we signaled transition relevance places using a $sign and overlapping speech with brackets. And also we highlighted the overlaps in red font. Those are the most important conventions, I think, to note. And I want to just say up front what the limitations of this methodology are. First of all, TikTok's algorithm does not permit representative sampling. As we were collecting duets, Ashley and I each collected them individually on our own accounts. The algorithm was feeding us more and more duets of the type that we were favoriting. And so this was not representative in terms of what we saw. We do not know how frequent conversational duets are compared to other duet types. We can have an impression that they are not the most common type. Many other types of duets appear on TikTok. A very common type is those where an RV reacts to an OV non-verbally with facial expressions, for example. Also, we did not interview or survey conversational duet producers in this study to ask about their motives and experiences. So any claims that we make about that are inferences from our conversational analysis. Now, that said, the findings, we do have findings that I think are quite interesting and interpretable. First of all, contrary to my initial assumption that the OV might not be aware that they were going to be duetted, it seems like duets are common enough that OVs have some idea that this is something that might happen to them. And by the way, I'm using OV and RV, these abbreviations, to refer both to the videos and the producers of the videos as a shorthand so that I don't have to say every time the producer of the OV and the producer of the RV. So OVs invite duets to varying degrees. First of all, you can set your video to allow duets or not allow duets, and they are set to allow duets by default. Obviously, all the duets that we collected had that setting, on that you could duet it, but it is the default setting. The OV might also implicitly invite duets by speaking at a slower pace or leaving pauses between their turns, or they might naturally just speak that way. But a lot of OVs are scripted or partially scripted. Fully scripted OVs we did not include as examples of conversational duets because in those cases the OV would have text overlays that indicated what RV was supposed to say. In other words, word for word, RV had a script that they were supposed to perform. But partial scripting could be in the form of, for example, what we call one-sided conversations, where you have the impression as the viewer that you're overhearing someone, for example, talking on the phone. Where you only hear their half of the conversation. And these have the merit of being able to stand on their own, even if they're not duetted. And then finally, OVs can invite somebody to duet them implicitly or explicitly. Implicitly by mentioning their name or talking about something that that person is known for, especially if that person is a celebrity, or explicitly saying, so-and-so, please duet this. It turns out that the strategy adopted by the OV, particularly whether they leave gaps or not, strongly affects overlapping, which is not terribly surprising. And I'll show you some of these different forms of OV as I talk about the strategies employed by the RV. So the RV's job, first and foremost, is to time their turns so that ideally they produce the impression of orderly turn taking. And when that's not possible, to strategically manage the overlap. And they do this either to make it appear cooperative or sometimes to make it appear intentionally uncooperative to signal certain kinds of social meanings. And then there's also a phenomenon that I've started thinking about lately that maybe we want to call careless overlaps, where they're not strongly intentional, but it's something that happens a lot with celebrities duet other people's videos. So the first example is of a partially scripted OV, actually one that involves an explicit invitation from a mother to her son. In this example, you see the transcription is on the right. I'll play the video for you in a second here. And I've indicated OV and RV's contributions. And you'll see that right away, the mother starts by saying, only duet this if you're my son. And you'll see that she leaves gaps and the turn taking is very orderly. There is no overlapping as would be indicated by red font if there was. So let's have a listen.
Only duet this if you're my son. Hi.
Hi, Mom.
Oh, I miss you so much. How's Ellie treating you?
I miss you too, and it's amazing.
Good. Well, I hope you're staying hydrated and healthy.
I am.
Doing a lot of working and less playing, I hope.
Working every day.
Good.
So this is a snippet that it goes on after this. And I think you might agree that this is pretty convincing in terms of looking like a synchronous conversational exchange, like maybe they're having a Zoom conversation where they're side by side. Here's So this is the explicit invitation. Here's another example where we have an unscripted OV, but the turn taking is still quite orderly and there's still minimal overlap, primarily because the RV is just producing minimal responses that are not very long and don't take up very much time. Although you will see that there is some overlap that occurs when RV anticipates OV's transition relevance place after a grammatically complete utterance. So the RV in this case, the OV, is demonstrating how she puts on her prosthetic legs. She doesn't have legs below the knee. And the RV is a kind of a TikTok celebrity who goes by the name Angry Reactions. And he has this very sort of angry looking face, but his shtick is that he says very supportive, positive things in a very angry way. So we'll listen to this example.
Hi, TikTok.
Hey.
I just wanted to give you a little glimpse on how I put on my 2 prosthetic legs.
Okay.
First step, getting into a chair. Definitely the hardest part.
Be careful. Be careful.
Next, I grab my inserts. These connect my leg to my prosthetic, and they have a screw. at the
Oh,
bottom,
I never knew they
which
had a screw.
Make sure my prosthetic leg does not come off when I'm walking.
Makes sense.
Flip it in.
So you may notice that the OV is, she's got a narrated voiceover here rather than recording her actual voice. It's one of the options, one of the multimodal options in creating TikTok duets. So I think the overlap here is the exception which proves the rule, because RV may very well have treated, and they have a screw as the complete grammatical utterance that it is, as a potential TRP, and jumped in. And of course, with a longer message, that was his longest message, there was some overlap, but mainly this illustrates an orderly exchange of turns with no overlapping. All right, and you see most of his turns are minimal responses. Hey, okay, be careful, makes sense. Now, the baby sample also has many examples of orderly turn taking. The baby's video can be considered a one-sided conversation because the baby is pretending to talk on the phone. And the baby leaves gaps. So, of course, the baby does not really talk because it's pre-verbal. It seems to only know one word, the last word here in the transcript. And the reason that the mother shared this video, I think she thought it funny, was that the baby was pretending to talk on the phone to grandma, and then at the end sort of produces this new word that it has learned, probably without understanding what it means. So the baby's laughing and sighing and babbling. So let's listen to how RV takes turns with the baby.
And I literally haven't even talked to him since. So. How's Formula Milk been? Yeah, I'm sure that's hard, but it gets better. So yeah, just wait till you can drink beer. Good talking to you, buddy.
So in many of the baby videos, the RV laughs and sighs along with the baby as a kind of a sort of a alignment, but does not, in this case and in many other cases, does not overlap speech with the baby's babbling, which are treated as turns, meaningful turns. Now, when overlapping does occur, and it does occur often, it's not always well managed. There were many examples that we thought were not really particularly successful because people didn't manage the overlaps too well. And it can seem like that they were interrupting the OV, although in some cases I think that was probably unintentional. They just weren't all that skillful in terms of the placement of their turns. But in many cases, overlaps were strategically managed. And one way they were managed was to give the impression of a high involvement style. As we can see in this example of cooperative overlap, between two gamer girls. These are girls who I think a game on Twitch TV where people can watch them playing the game and can chat about their gameplay. So these are actual Twitch gamers, I think, who duet a lot. Both of these girls duet not only with each other, but with other people. And the response video on the left, this is actually they've been fighting, they've been arguing, in part because the girl on the right, who is all dressed in pink, has a very high-pitched voice. She actually exaggerates the high pitch of her voice. That's part of her persona on TikTok. And the girl on the left is sort of not happy with that, doesn't like that voice, and they're having some kind of a fight. And this is the resolution of the fight. But what you'll notice here, first of all, a couple of things. Both of the videos have text overlay that starts with POV. This stands for point of view, and it indicates the kind of scenario that they're acting out. So the OV, another gamer girl tries to fight, and then POV gamer girl tries to fight. This is indicating what they're doing. Also, you may notice that the original video has sort of semi-scripted what RV should say. RV is kind of limited in their responses. And in this case, the RV is responding very cooperatively to the OV in such a way that it creates the illusion of a very engaged style, especially when the overlaps occur. So let's have a listen.
You know, as girls, why don't we just become friends? Why don't we game together?
Okay, I'm
I
down.
understand the voice can be annoying, but you know,
I can deal with it.
we need the wallets.
You're funny.
You understand?
Yeah, I'm so sorry
Awesome.
for acting
No.
hard and all that.
No, I literally just came in here because I wanted to be your friend.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
no,
God.
let's play.
Let's
Yeah,
play,
yeah, I'm
yep.
totally down to play.
Okay.
This is another example that I think sounds really quite natural, and it's due to in particular, the placement of RV's turns, where she overlaps with OV, but she also places her turns such that it appears that OV overlaps with her. And especially notably here. Okay, but uncooperative overlap, although it's a little bit less common, is observed, and even in a couple of cases with the baby. So the baby's laughing, the baby's happy. However, an RV can recast what the baby is saying to attribute different kinds of characteristics to the baby and to set different kinds of scenes. And in this case, we have an RV, a young man who is very distraught, who apparently has borrowed money from the baby, and the baby is demanding it back, and the RV cannot pay. And so the baby is here cast as a heartless moneylender, especially through the positioning of the overlaps, which are positioned such that it appears that the baby is rudely interrupting the RV. So let's have a listen.
Come on, I just need a little bit more time, all right? Stop, I will get you your money, okay? I will. I promise. I have some money coming in and how could a person even say that? You are awful. I'm sorry. Stop laughing. Stop laughing.
So here the baby's laughter is construed as being evil laughter rather than happy laughter. Now, there are also examples where the RV overlaps extensively with OV, and I'm going to speed up because I just noticed the time. And I think in this case, this is Gordon Ramsay. He's a British celebrity chef on television. He's known for being rude and interrupting people, and he duets a lot. And I think that in this case, it's part of his persona to be rude. So.
Good. I can't wait. Let's go, big boy.
I am following your exact.
Okay, so this should be perfect.
That's kind of on you.
Yeah, okay, I'll take it.
One hand.
What are you doing? Well, hold on a minute.
Do not notice the shell.
No, not with the shell in there.
So I call these careless overlaps rather than unintentional. The celebrity doesn't have to bother to be very precise about where they're inserting their turns. Beyond canonical looking how are we going to shorten this? Because I wanted to talk about two cases that I think go beyond canonical conversation, but that are still conversational in a way. One is where addressivity is mixed. OV and RV address each other, but they also address the audience. And another is where modalities are mixed, where one half of the conversation communicates in printed out signs, in only text, in gesture, or sign language, which lets you overlap extensively without interfering with intelligibility. Here's an example of mixed addressivity. James Charles is a beauty influencer. He's quite a celebrity online. And he and this woman who is putting on makeup that he designed both start by referring to each other in the third person and then switch to referring to each other in the second person, and there's considerable overlap.
Oh my God, her eyebrows already look so good.
So just in case something I don't know, I've been doing makeup for about 2 years.
That's
And
it?
the whole reason I started makeup was because the first real makeup tutorial that I've ever watched was James Charles.
Oh my God.
And ever since that one video, I've just been so inspired to do my makeup.
That makes me so
To the
happy.
point where I was doing my makeup almost every day for months. And
Can't
since
relate,
he
but love that
inspired
for
me
you.
to do makeup, I've always wanted him to see at least one of my looks. Would really appreciate it if you guys
so
tag
good.
James Charles in
Wow,
the
the
comments
blend.
and did everything you can for him to see this video. This is the fun.
Oh my God. Literally me get.
And James,
Oh
I
my God,
love you and thank you for inspiring me.
So here you have extensive overlap, which seems to be careless, and it seems to be a thing that celebrities do, right? That they're sort of doing you a favor by duetting you. They don't necessarily go through the whole process of listening to it over and over and timing their turns because they don't have to, because they're celebrities. And then the last example is what we call Grinch impression during sex. This is actually a different participation structure where we have the OV responding to, this is a stitch. So we call the person in the stitch the IV, the initiating video. Then we have the OV and the RV, and they use different modalities. The RV in particular communicates without any kind of speech through text, emoji, and gestures, and the others speak. And you'll have a
What's an embarrassing thing that you've said during sex?
So I'm making out with this guy from Tinder. Never met him before the night. We're in my bed. I'm straddling him, and I start laughing, and I pause, and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Look what I can do." I got 4 o'clock, wallow in self-pity. 4:30, stare into the abyss. 5 o'clock, starve tongue, got tired. No one. 5:30, jazzercise. And what was interesting about that is like he was cool with that, and like he like laughed, and we started making out again.
So here's the transcript of the 3 modes. And you can see, especially at these points, that there's quite a bit of overlapping, but it doesn't in any way interfere with the speech that the woman is saying. When she says, "I'm making out with this guy from Tinder," he has text saying the guy from Tinder in question with an emoji pointing down towards his face. And then he's also making a gesture pointing down to his face. And then he mouths what she's saying together with her, and then says other things as well. Like, I thought it was hilarious. So we won't listen to it again. We don't have time. I just want to return now to the research questions. The first one, what user behaviors promote the illusion that the RV and the OV are conversing together in real time? They collaborate to various degrees in co-constructing duet conversations. OVs by inviting duets explicitly or implicitly and pre-structuring the interaction through scripting, pacing, or one-sided conversations, and RVs by orienting to OVs through the positioning and timing of their responses. RVs generally oriented to the no gap, no overlap ideal. And when overlaps were inevitable, many RVs managed them strategically to create the appearance of competitive interruption or cooperative engagement. Second question asked, what kinds of conversational contexts are discursively invoked, and how are these reflected in the personae and registers that OV and RV perform? In short, interaction management indexes social meanings in various ways, including situations, roles, relationships, and character attributions. The OV sets the context through one-sided dialogues and explicit invitations. But some RVs recast the OV in a different light than was intended, such as in responding to the baby video and casting the baby as a heartless moneylender. Celebrities and influencers spoke over the OV carelessly due to their privileged status, but their overlapping also expresses their personal styles. James Charles is very over-the-top loving, and Gordon Ramsay is rude, and those are their personae, and those were expressed through the overlaps. These latter observations in particular underscore the performative nature of conversational duets, which is especially evident in duets that deviate from the norms of spoken conversation, for example, because the interlocutors are communicating playfully in different modes or switching between referential frames and speaking directly to the audience. Why do TikTokers create conversational duets? Are the duets a new type of conversation or merely simulated conversations performed to entertain TikTok audiences? So one point of view on this is expressed by Herman 2023. She interviewed TikTokers who say that they create duets because they believe the algorithm favors them and they want to get more visibility. But they consider duets a second-rate form of creative content that mooches off of other people's content that's not creative. As a contrasting point of view, we suggest that conversational duets display considerable creativity and that they are possibly motivated, at least in part, intrinsically motivated by the perverse satisfaction that can arise from conversing in an improbable venue, like I found in the earlier work on ITV SMS, for example. So overall, TikTokers can and do overcome the challenges posed by the platform's interface to produce conversational duets that seem natural from the point of view of turn-taking and other conversational mechanics. I hope you agree that some of these examples seemed quite natural. And this is further evidence that the conversational imperative operates even in technological environments not intended for conversation. Yet the duet's performative, temporally asymmetrical, and multimodal nature suggests a new form of video-mediated conversation, consistent with the notion that technological change is extending the definition of conversation itself. I'm going to maybe skip the broader implications because there are certain practical uses of duets that I think knowing how to produce good conversational duets can actually have practical benefits. Clearer communication, for example, we can talk about it if we have time. And I see a number of possible future directions. I would love to analyze these multimodal duets for issues of floor control, interactional dominance, multimodal discourse processing, and so forth. I'd love to analyze interaction in other TikTok genres, such as sketches and skits, and stitches and skits. And I think it would be very useful to interview TikTokers about their motivations and practices for creating these very conversational styles of duets. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much for your presentation. The floor is open for questions, and we have one question in the chat. Imane Bufaden, do you want to ask your question yourself? Just invited to open your mic. Okay, Genia, would you take over?
Sure. So there's the first question in the chat is, I really enjoyed the talk. I just wanted to share a thought. Could it not be possible to introduce the OV to some AI-supported tools to add some conversational turn-taking features, like changing the intonation, pauses, to create that sort of harmony or non-harmony depending on the duet creator's social purpose?
That is a great suggestion, and I think that probably could be possible. I haven't seen anything yet in AI where I haven't seen people doing that. So the way I've seen AI operate on in TikTok duets has to do a lot with filters. So I've been studying augmented reality face filters, including on TikTok, and there's new kinds of filters that use deep fake technology, actually, generative adversarial networks to generate entirely new versions of the person rather than simply overlaying a kind of a filter over them, that can profoundly change their profoundly and also subtly change their physical features. So given that that's already happening, I think that what you suggest probably will come about. And that's a great prediction. I love it.
There's another one from Imana as well, which is, thank you so much, Susan. What these findings would tell us on the orientation of human language in the future?
I have to think about that one. I've spent a lot of time lately thinking about what the facial modifications tell us about the future of visual authenticity, of facial authenticity, and not so much about human language in the future. But one thing we know is that CMC is increasingly becoming what Jeff Hancock and his colleagues at Stanford call AI-mediated communication, or AIMC. And it's a really exciting research area. There's a lot of work being done on AIMC. And of course, mainly in not in TikTok duets, in other more traditional forms of CMC, but I think that we will see AI being involved, particularly since these duets are already manipulated in certain ways. Why not, if you had that power to change the actual intonation or leave gaps or whatever? And you could leave gaps, actually. You could do it manually, right? You could sort of cut and paste sections of OV into your video so that you left more gaps in between, but that's very time consuming. So if there's a technology that does that for you, I think people will do it, definitely. And thank you so much for that comment. That's really brilliant.
There's another question in the chat from Rhiannon Davis Parsons, saying, thank you for a really interesting presentation of your findings. I was wondering if you would have considered looking at TikTok live videos, especially with the live duets feature.
I'm not familiar with live duets, I don't think, but I have a new student from China who is looking at TikTok live videos and looking at the chat, the text chat that interacts with the person in the video. So live duets. So does that mean that people can both be live side by side in real time? Because if so, that's different, right? Because it doesn't have the temporal décalage, it doesn't have that disconnect there. They really are together in real time. And so it's sort of less of an interactional accomplishment, if you will, but still no doubt interesting in many ways. So I'll have to check that out. Thank you.
Then there's a couple thank yous for the fabulous talk. And then from Alex Gergokopoulou, thanks so much, Susan. Super interesting. How do you think the embodied mirroring that is going on here affects our illusion of conversing in real time?
Yeah, so that's actually a sort of another limitation of our analysis is that we did not look at their posture and their gesturing and their eye gaze and so forth, because that's something else that can be manipulated. We did see some videos, so normally it's side by side with the OV on the right, but we saw some videos where the position of OV and RV had been reversed because of the gaze orientation of OV. So OV is looking in a particular direction, like the baby video, if you remember, the baby OV is actually not looking towards the RV, it's looking away. So people sometimes switched the positions because you can do that now. It's a new feature that TikTok affords, so that the baby appeared to be looking towards OV. So there's that kind of manipulation going on. But of course, the RV could very consciously mirror the actions. In fact, there's an interesting study that was done. It was a bachelor's and honors thesis looking at a teacher with very, very young children, like 5 years old, who were learning English. And the teacher is doing, saying certain things and singing songs or whatever, and asking the kids questions in her OV. It was intended, of course, to be duetted. And then the kids are duetting, with the help of adults. And in the child's duets, the RVs, you see the children very much imitating the gestures and the postures and the behavior and the intonation of the teacher as they're, learning English words. So I think this is something that may happen both consciously and unconsciously, and it would be a really rich area of investigation.
The next question from Max Hofrichter is, many thanks for the interesting presentation. You mentioned, if I recall correctly, that you disqualified fully scripted duets. However, I think I've seen a number of duets where a fully scripted OV is responded to in a way that deviates from the script. Have you analyzed these kind of interactions at all?
Yeah, no, because we excluded them, but if it was fully scripted, we excluded it. But we did see examples of that type, and it underscores an important point, which is that RV has the last word, right? So RV does not have to go along with OV's discourse register or topic even. Although I have to say that, so we did see some what we called sort of uncooperative RVs. But my favorite example of an uncooperative RV is actually not in a case that's fully scripted, but one that's partially scripted, where the OV has point of view. The setting is that she's a weird girl, a weird sort of geeky girl, and she has been assigned to work together with the captain of the football team on a course project. So that's the scenario. It's been set up, and she's talking about how they're working on the project together. And so a lot of people RVs responded and duetted this. And in one, there was a young man who was dressed in a football helmet and football jersey. And this is American football, by the way, not soccer. And all he did throughout her OV's video was to say, "I play football. I play football." And, whatever she said, "I play football." So he was very uncooperative. He did not at all, fulfill his role in saying his parts in the script. But interestingly, he still timed his outbursts of "I play football" close to transition relevance places. So even though he was uncooperative in many, many ways, he was still unconsciously being cooperative in terms of conversational turn taking. But yeah, so it would be really interesting to look at the kind of in cases where there's something is fully scripted and the RV does not comply. That is always RV's prerogative. They don't have to be cooperative with OV.
And maybe the last question, Tenya?
Yeah, the last question is, did you see any examples of duets within duets, i.e.
Yes.
a third person duetting with a previous duet?
Yes, we did, definitely. It can become really recursive. I don't know if you remember, there was kind of a fad during the pandemic of sea shanties. Somebody sang an old sea shanty, I mean, yeah, I guess that's what you call it, right? Like an old seafaring song. And they recorded themselves on TikTok doing this, and then other people started duetting them and singing along. And so it ended up that people all around the world were in this one video, which was a duet of 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 everybody singing together. I'm really interested in this embedding of layers of interaction through duetting duets, like in that last example that I showed you, where there was a stitch, so the RV was actually duetting a stitch video. We have people then duetting that, and then somebody then could duet the duet of the duet. And I think that multimodal resources become very important in these cases to preserve, any kind of intelligibility. Because if you've got all these people talking over each other, you can't hear. So we see a lot more text overlays, use of gesture, emojis, and so forth. And I have a sort of a proposition that I would like to test, that the more embeddings you have, the more multimodal the layers of interaction become. So thank you for that question.
Thank you very much again, Susan, for this for me, completely new topic. And also the interesting discussion in the end. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone participating and asking questions.
May I just ask something? I presented a version of this talk to a group of people who study social interaction at UC Santa Barbara last year. And I was surprised that only one person had really ever spent any time looking at TikTok. And these were researchers from sociology and education and linguistics and everything. I wonder how many people are actually, go on TikTok and look at TikTok in the audience. Maybe those of you who are still here could comment and just say, yes or no. I'm just curious. This group of, high-level discourse analysts. Okay, we're seeing a lot of yeses. Okay, good. Yeah. I thought you guys would more than that audience. No? Okay, some no. Okay. A lot. Jenya says, okay. Some people are researching it.
The chat
right,
and send you
good.
the result of the chat.
Yes, thank you. I would
will
love
send you a
that.
copy of that.
Yeah.
And it's my great pleasure also to announce the follow-up talks, and I will ask Jenya to share your screen to show the program for the rest of the year.
Yes. So I will stop that and show you. Sorry about that. Here it is. Yes.
Okay. As I said in the beginning, in the next couple of months, members of the network will present their work, and this is the program for the next 6-7 months. And you are very welcome to attend the presentations. And you can already start registering for the new lecture series. Anna Schlauf will take your emails. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much again. I want to say bye-bye